The millionaire's daughter stopped breathing until the maid acted quickly and saved her life. In a world where the divide between rich and poor rises higher than any wall of stone, sometimes just a fleeting moment is enough to alter destiny. Ethan Carter, a renowned tech mogul, cold and relentlessly controlling, was, behind the gilded doors of his mansion, nothing more than a lonely man carrying the grief of losing his wife while struggling to raise his 10-month-old daughter. Sofia, the new maid with calloused hands and a heart scarred by the loss of her own child, stepped into that house like an unexpected beam of light. And on one seemingly peaceful afternoon, when a child's laughter suddenly broke into choking silence, fate began to rewrite every life forever. Late afternoon descended upon the Carter mansion like a pale, golden veil. The last rays of sunlight slipped through the wide glass windows, stretching into long streaks across the polished wooden floor. In that luxurious yet quiet space, Emily, the 10-month-old baby girl, was babbling happily, playing by herself on the cream-colored rug. Her cheerful giggles filled the air like the only melody in the room, breaking the constant silence of the house. Sofia knelt in the corner, her hands swiftly wiping each wooden groove with a damp cloth. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead, yet her gaze remained gentle, occasionally drifting toward Emily. The sight of the little girl at play brought back painful memories of Liam, the son she had lost too soon. With every heartbeat, that loss still throbbed like a wound that had never closed. Emily grabbed a small plastic toy, babbling sounds that meant nothing yet brimmed with innocence. Sofia smiled softly, her heart aching and warm at once. Suddenly, Emily's laughter turned into a strangled gasp. Her eyes widened, her face flushed red, and her tiny hands clawed helplessly at the air. The toy was lodged in her throat, cutting off her breath. "Oh my God!" Sofia cried out, throwing the cloth aside and rushing toward the baby. The other staff in the room froze, panic flashing in their eyes, but none dared move forward. A maid covered her mouth with her hand, while a guard bolted away to call for help. The air grew heavy, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. Sofia didn't think. Her body acted on instinct. Memories of sleepless nights with Liam, the panic of his own breathing troubles, surged back and guided her. She lifted Emily, turning her slightly to the side, and delivered firm, precise blows to the small back. Just then, Ethan entered the room. He had just ended a business call when he heard the screams. Before him was a sight beyond belief. His daughter, blue-faced, in the arms of a new maid. "Emily!" The cry ripped from Ethan's throat as his phone crashed to the floor, shattering. He lunged forward but froze halfway, his legs rooted as if bound by stone. For the first time, the man who prided himself on control was utterly powerless. Sofia clutched the baby to her chest, her hands trembling yet resolute. "Breathe, darling. Please," she whispered through tears. An eternity seemed to pass. Then suddenly, a cry burst forth. Emily wailed, her sobs echoing through the room like a song of rebirth. Ethan sank onto the floor, clutching his daughter tightly, as if letting go for even a moment would make her disappear. He had never felt so fragile. For years, he had built the image of a man who could never fall, but the moment just now had stripped away the facade. Ethan Carter was nothing more than a father powerless against fate. Sofia sat beside him, her hand still trembling slightly. Her disheveled hair clung to a face wet with tears, yet in her eyes shone a glimmer of peace. For Emily's life had been saved. The entire mansion seemed to fall silent until whispers began to rise. "She really is a hero." No, it was just luck. Could it be she did it just to get attention? The venomous murmurs slithered through the crowd. Some staff members approached Sofia, embracing her with gratitude. But others held back, their eyes tinged with envy and suspicion. In a house where power was measured in wealth, anyone who stood out too quickly was bound to become a thorn. The door opened and Victoria appeared, Ethan's fiancée, in a lavish gown, her every step echoing with pride. Her eyes swept across the scene, finally stopping at Sofia, who was holding Emily to calm her down. What happened here? Victoria's voice cut through the room, cold and sharp. A butler quickly explained, adding details that made Sofia appear as though she had overstepped her place. Victoria narrowed her eyes, her lips curving into an ambiguous smile. How strange that a new servant would so boldly hold Ethan's daughter. Kindness may be the easiest excuse, but sometimes it's also a way to carve out a position. The room sank into an uneasy silence. Ethan tightened his hold on Emily and lifted his gaze to Victoria. In that look, Sofia caught something she had never seen before: hesitation, and then, at last, a quiet defiance. "I don't care what anyone else thinks." Ethan's voice was hoarse but firm. "She just saved my daughter's life." Victoria froze, her smile vanishing. The staff around them looked bewildered, unaccustomed to seeing Ethan openly defend an outsider in such a way. Victoria faltered for only an instant, her eyes flashing with displeasure, but it was quickly hidden beneath a charming smile. "Of course," she said sweetly. "I didn't mean anything else. I just want everything to be more professional." The atmosphere in the living room seemed to freeze. Everyone remained silent, afraid that even a single strong breath would be enough to snap the taut, fragile string stretched between them. Sofia lowered her head, her heart pounding. She wished she could disappear at that very moment to escape the icy stare that Victoria had just barely concealed. Beatrice, the elderly housekeeper, quietly approached and lightly touched Sofia's back. That small touch was like an anchor, reminding her she was not alone in this house. Ethan said nothing more. He simply carried Emily in his arms, holding her close to his chest, then turned and walked upstairs. His tall figure loomed heavy, as though each step bore the weight of the fear that had just been ripped from his chest. Victoria, of course, did not miss the chance. She followed closely behind, her heels striking evenly against the marble floor, the sound as sharp as a blade. A while later, once Emily had been placed in her crib and Ethan still lingered beside his daughter, Victoria left the room. Before descending the stairs, she stopped right where Sofia was cleaning a vase. "You did very well today," Victoria said, a smile curving her lips though her eyes were hard as ice. "Very useful." Sofia looked up and met her piercing gaze. There was not a hint of gratitude there, only a warning. "But remember this," Victoria lowered her voice, just enough for the two of them to hear. "In this house, everyone has their place. Never confuse yours." Then she walked away, the scent of expensive perfume lingering like a claw mark in the air. Sofia stood still, both hands gripping the damp cloth tightly. In that moment, the weight of what she had just endured pressed heavily upon her, as though her courage in saving Emily had suddenly become a crime. But when she turned, Beatrice's gaze was there, gentle yet steady. "Don't let her words shake you," Beatrice whispered. "The truth remains the truth. You were the one who saved the child." Those words, soft as they were, felt like a candle lit in a dark room. Sofia drew in a deep breath, forcing herself to steady once more. Night fell. In the small staff room, Sofia lay on her side, eyes wide open in the darkness. The image of Emily in her arms remained vivid, the cry that burst out after that breathless moment still echoing. But beneath it all was another memory, a wound carved deep. She saw again the face of Liam, her little son. That thin, frail face, those once bright eyes slowly closing forever, still haunted her like an engraving on her heart. She clutched the small photograph on her pillow, whispering unconsciously, "Liam, if you were still here, surely you would have laughed like Emily did today." Silent tears fell, soaking into the pillow, blending with the pain that had never healed. The next morning, clear sunlight poured down over the Carter garden. The rose bushes, still touched with night dew, sparkled as though silver had been laid upon them. Sofia bent down to water them, every gesture slow and gentle, as if she were tending to a fragile life rather than a flower. From a distance, Ethan approached carrying Emily. He stopped, watching. There was something in Sofia's posture that softened his heart without warning. Emily babbled in her father's arms, her eyes lighting up the moment she saw Sofia. She stretched out her tiny hands toward the woman, wriggling insistently to be held. Flustered, Sofia stammered, "No, no, sir, I am only—" Ethan gave a faint smile, cutting her off. "You just saved my daughter's life. I think Emily knows very well who gave her another chance to breathe." Faced with Emily's pleading eyes, Sofia finally extended her arms. The baby immediately leaned toward her, bursting into cheerful giggles as soon as she was held. That laughter seemed to brighten the whole garden. Holding Emily close, Sofia's heart overflowed with a mixture of pain and sweetness. Ethan stepped nearer, his gaze softening. After a brief silence, he spoke. "Sofia, I want to make you an offer. Your work goes far beyond duty. I will raise your salary. It is only right, considering the responsibility and the courage you showed for Emily." Sofia shook her head at once, flustered. "No, sir. I didn't do it for payment. I just couldn't stand by and watch a child in danger. Please don't trouble yourself about money." Ethan's eyes froze for a moment. In his world, everything had a price. But Sofia was different. That refusal struck like a knock, cracking further the walls he had built around his heart. "Do you have a child, Sofia? Forgive me if I'm being too forward." His voice was gentle, tinged with curiosity. Sofia stiffened. She drew a deep breath, then nodded softly. "I once had a little boy, Liam, but I couldn't keep him with me." Ethan was silent. In Sofia's eyes he saw a reflection of himself, a wound that would never heal. Emily babbled a few innocent sounds, her tiny hand patting lightly against Sofia's face. Sofia laughed, a rare smile after so many days of hidden tears. Ethan watched the scene and, without realizing it, laughed as well. A laughter he had not found in a very long time. And in that very moment, at the far corner of the veranda, Victoria appeared. She stood still, her cold eyes fixed on the scene. Sofia holding Emily, laughing happily, and Ethan, the man she believed to be hers, smiling along. A smile spread across Victoria's lips, but there was no warmth in it. It was as cold as the blade of a knife just drawn from its sheath. From that morning on, the atmosphere in the Carter mansion changed. Some of the staff began to look at Sofia with curious eyes, whispering behind her back. The image of her holding Emily, the sound of laughter shared with Ethan, the master known for his coldness, spread quickly like an unbelievable story. To some it was admiration. To others, it was a thorn in the eye. Victoria said nothing at first. She remained silent, the gentle smile still fixed on her lips, but her eyes quietly followed Sofia's every move. And then the opportunity came. One weekend evening, Ethan hosted a grand party at the mansion to welcome his partners. Bright lights gleamed, glasses clinked, and guests chatted merrily. Sofia, along with the other staff, busied herself serving. She only wanted to do her job well to avoid attracting attention. But no one knew that from the moment she stepped into that glittering room, she had already become the centerpiece of a game she knew nothing about. In the middle of the party, a stir broke out. A young butler rushed to whisper something in Victoria's ear, and immediately after, her voice rang out loud enough for the entire hall to hear, "The family's pocket watch has gone missing." Guests murmured in shock, and all eyes turned at once. That pocket watch was an heirloom, passed down through generations of the Carters, a symbol of power and honor. "Lock the doors," a man in a suit commanded. "No one leaves." Sofia froze when she saw Victoria's eyes sweep over her. Without a word, she already knew who the target would be. Minutes later, the police were called. Heavy footsteps echoed across the grand hall. An officer's voice rose above the noise. "We will be checking the belongings of all staff." Sofia trembled when her turn came. Her small bag was opened before everyone. And there, beneath a handkerchief, the silver pocket watch gleamed. The entire hall gasped. The murmurs cut into her like knives. "I knew it. She was only pretending to be kind." Taking advantage of trust to steal something so precious, disgraceful. Sofia went pale, her eyes wide. She stammered, "No, it wasn't me. I never touched it. Someone must have put it there." But in the chaos, her words were no more than whispers in a storm. Victoria stepped forward, her face painted with false regret. "How heartbreaking. I thought perhaps we were wrong to trust so quickly." Ethan held Emily in his arms, his gaze blazing. He stepped forward, his voice dropping low. "Enough." The entire room fell silent. He looked at Sofia, his eyes unwavering. "I believe her. Sofia would never do this. If it weren't for Sofia, my daughter would no longer be here." All around, murmurs broke out. Victoria frowned, her eyes flashing with fury, but Ethan allowed no one to interfere. He stepped forward, Emily in his arms, and looked directly at the officer. "This house has had a hidden camera system installed for many years. I have never made it public, but today, to protect the honor of an innocent person, I will make the truth clear." A tremor rippled through the room. The staff exchanged glances, whispering. Victoria bit her lip, her face paling slightly. Ethan signaled for a technician to bring a laptop and connect directly to the surveillance system. Everyone held their breath. Images from every corner of the living room appeared, rewinding to the exact moment the pocket watch disappeared. The screen froze. A familiar figure appeared. Not Sofia. It was Clara, the young maid who always followed Victoria at parties. The footage was clear. She glanced around, slipped the watch into a cloth, and quickly left the frame. "My God," someone gasped. The room seemed to explode. The police officer immediately stepped toward Clara, his voice icy. "Mrs. Clara, you are under arrest for false accusation and planting fabricated evidence." Clara trembled, trying to explain, her voice breaking. I didn't want to. Mrs. Victoria, she was the one who told me to do it." All eyes turned to Victoria. The space froze. She still tried to appear calm, but her face had turned pale for an instant. Ethan held Emily in his arms, every word cutting like a blade. "Victoria, do you have anything to say? You ordered someone to frame Sofia, to make her despised in this house. Out of selfishness, you dared to trample on the honor of an innocent woman?" Victoria gave a cold smile, trying to justify herself. "Ethan, I only wanted what's best for you. She doesn't belong here. I did it to protect your family." "My family does not need to be protected with lies." Ethan cut her off, his voice firm. Victoria forced a smile, her voice trembling but still clinging to pride. "Ethan, I did it for you. She's just a servant. You're blind enough to let someone like her into your life. I cannot allow you and Emily to be taken advantage of." Ethan's eyes blazed as he cut her short. "Enough! Don't use protection as a mask for your selfishness and lies. The one taking advantage here isn't Sofia. It's you. You used my trust to manipulate everyone, and when you couldn't get what you wanted, you humiliated someone weaker. That is not love, Victoria. That is possession and deceit." Victoria's face burned red, her voice choked. "You'll regret this. One day, she will hurt you. I am the only one who truly stands by you." Ethan tightened his hold on Emily, his words sharp and final. Someone who truly stands by me would never harm an innocent young woman, would never plant evil in my own house. From this moment, it is over between us. I never want to see you set foot in here again." Victoria's eyes widened, her lips trembling. But before she could say another word, 2 officers stepped forward, cuffed Clara, and firmly placed a hand on Victoria's shoulder. "You will come to the station to cooperate with the investigation," the officer said sternly. Whispers spread through the hall. The staff looked at one another. Some sighed in relief, others shook their heads in disbelief. Ethan did not turn away. His eyes stayed fixed on Victoria until she was led out, her high heels striking the cold marble floor, each sound echoing like the final notes of a play, built on deception. In the hall, the tension slowly eased. Ethan looked down at Sofia. She still stood frozen, her eyes brimming with tears, as though unable to believe the truth had just been revealed. He handed Emily to her. The baby giggled, reaching out to touch Sofia's cheek. "Justice has spoken," Ethan said softly, just for her to hear. "And I will never let anyone humiliate you again." Sofia held Emily tightly, tears streaming down her face. In the mansion that had just weathered a storm, for the first time she felt true protection, not just from a master, but from a man willing to face the truth. In the days that followed, the Carter mansion returned to its usual rhythm, though the echoes of the incident still lingered. Without Victoria, the atmosphere felt lighter, yet a clear emptiness remained. Ethan was busy handling business and media affairs, but every evening he made time for Emily, and more often than not, Sofia was there as well. One evening, after Emily had fallen asleep, Ethan remained in the living room with Sofia. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm, flickering light across the room. Ethan looked at Sofia's hands, the same trembling hands that had once saved his daughter's life, and asked, "Sofia, have you ever thought that fate brought you here?" She was startled, but then gently shook her head. "I don't dare think that far. I only know that since losing Liam, I've lived like a shadow. Emily has given me a reason to move forward, but I don't want anyone to think I'm trying to take someone's place. I only want to do my job well." Ethan was silent for a moment, then softly replied, "No one thinks that anymore. At least, not me." Sofia looked up and met his gaze, a gaze no longer that of a master to a servant, but one filled with deep gratitude, mingled with something gentler. Her heart quickened, but she quickly lowered her eyes to avoid it. In the quiet room, only the crackling of the fire could be heard. A new, indistinct feeling was quietly beginning to take root. In the days after the incident, life in the Carter mansion changed completely. Ethan no longer buried himself in endless business trips. He managed his work from afar, spending more time at home. The once cold house slowly warmed with Emily's bright laughter and moments that seemed ordinary but were infinitely precious. Ethan began learning how to care for his daughter. Once he fumbled while changing her diaper, making Emily cry in hiccups. Sofia laughed softly and gently placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him step by step. When Emily finally stopped crying, Ethan's eyes lit up as though he had rediscovered a part of his lost youth. On nights when he couldn't sleep, he would wander into the hallway, his face weary. Seeing him, Sofia brought a cup of hot tea. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she whispered. Ethan stared at her quietly, his eyes deep in the darkness, then nodded. Her words sank into his heart like an anchor in a storm. One afternoon, Emily sat in Sofia's lap, babbling. Suddenly, the little girl uttered a clear word. "Mama." Sofia froze, tears welling in her eyes. Ethan stood still, his heart tightening, both aching and tender. Emily had unconsciously spoken the name of the one she had lost in her life, but in that moment, Sofia and Emily seemed to merge into one. Ethan watched, overwhelmed by feelings he no longer wanted to deny. That evening, the moonlight spread across the garden. Sofia stood by the rose trellis, the night breeze gently brushing her hair. Ethan stepped forward, stopping just behind her. "Sofia." His voice was low, husky, yet resolute. "Since the day you entered this house, everything has changed. I once thought I could live only with work and solitude, but I've realized I was wrong." Sofia turned, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. Ethan took a step closer, his gaze shining as if ready to bear everything. "I can't promise gold, wealth, or luxury. All I can promise is that I will be here. I will listen. I will respect you. I want to be by your side, not as your employer, but as a man who has found his heart again. Because of you." Sofia turned fully, her eyes shimmering in the moonlight. Her heart trembled, yet her voice was calm, steady. "I have never asked for anything but sincerity. If this love is meant to come, let it come slowly. I want it to endure, not fade away." Ethan lifted his hand, gently brushing her damp cheek. Sofia did not turn away. Moonlight surrounded them, tender and pure. In that fragile moment, he leaned down. Their first kiss came, not hurried, not showy, but gentle and profound, like a vow. Upstairs, Emily slept peacefully, while in the garden below, a quiet love had finally found its voice. After their kiss beneath the moonlight, peace seemed to return at last. Ethan and Sofia began to savor warm days with Emily, their love quietly taking root. But in houses built on secrets and pride, peace never lasts for long. A shadow from the past was already waiting, ready to strike with another storm. That afternoon, the atmosphere in the Carter mansion was quiet, broken only by Emily's cheerful laughter echoing from the living room. Sofia was arranging fresh roses in a glass vase. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the window, casting a gentle, peaceful glow on her face. The large door suddenly swung open. Victoria appeared. Her glamorous dress clung tightly to her figure, her face carefully made up, but her eyes had lost their usual pride. She walked straight into the room, her heels striking the marble floor. "Ethan!" Her voice trembled, laced with desperation. "Please, just listen to me one last time. I was wrong, but we can start over. For you, for Emily, for everything." Ethan stood firm, his gaze cold as steel. "Victoria, it's over between us. You didn't just betray my trust. You tried to destroy the woman who saved my daughter's life. There is nothing more to say." But Victoria did not give up. She came closer, her eyes red with tears. "You don't understand. I love you. I can't live without you." Before Ethan could react, Victoria suddenly threw her arms around him, pulling him down and pressing her lips to his in a desperate, forced kiss. At that very moment, Sofia stepped out of the adjoining room, still holding the vase of flowers. The sight froze her in place. The vase slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor, the sound of breaking glass echoing through the room like a clap of thunder. "No," Sofia whispered, tears welling, before she turned and fled. Ethan immediately shoved Victoria away, fury blazing in his eyes. "Are you insane?" he roared. Without hesitation, he rushed after Sofia's retreating figure. Servants and staff poured into the hallway, witnessing the chaos. Sofia hurried down the stairs, but Ethan caught her hand. "Sofia, don't go! Look at me!" His voice cracked with desperation. She pulled away, her eyes brimming with tears. "I already saw, Ethan. I don't want to be the one in between." At that moment, Victoria stepped out, her voice sharp, trying to reclaim the upper hand. "See, Ethan? Even she doesn't believe you? Do you really think a common servant could ever replace me?" The air froze. All the staff held their breath. Ethan spun around, his eyes blazing. "Enough, Victoria," he thundered. "The one who doesn't belong here is you." He stepped forward, standing protectively in front of Sofia, his voice echoing through the grand hall. Everyone, listen to me. This woman," he clasped Sofia's hand tightly, "not only saved Emily's life, she saved my heart as well. I don't need lies. I don't need empty pride. I need a real home, and I have found it with her." Victoria's face went pale, her lips trembling, speechless. Ethan turned to Sofia, his eyes softening, though his voice carried like a vow. "Sofia, I know I am not perfect. I've let you be hurt. I've made mistakes. But this much is true. I cannot imagine another day without you. Be my wife. Be Emily's mother, not only in love, but in name. Let me build a home with you, with my whole heart." The hall was utterly silent, broken only by Sofia's quick, shallow breaths. Her tears fell, but this time not from pain, rather from overwhelming emotion. "Ethan," her voice choked, "are you sure? This isn't just a decision made in anger?" Ethan shook his head, holding her hand tighter. "I have never been more certain." Before everyone, he dropped to one knee on the cold marble floor, his eyes never leaving hers. "Marry me, Sofia." The mansion seemed to erupt in murmurs of awe. Sofia covered her mouth with her hand, her heart racing. Emily, in Beatrice's arms, babbled and laughed as if offering her blessing. In that moment, Sofia gave a small nod. "Yes." Ethan rose and pulled her into his embrace. Applause filled the hall, drowning out Victoria's muffled sobs. Victoria turned away. Her heels struck the marble floor with heavy, lonely steps. No more pleas, no more tears. She walked straight out of the mansion, leaving behind a shattered dream. After the proposal before everyone, the entire Carter mansion was filled with a joy it had never known. Faces of astonishment slowly gave way to smiles of blessing. 3 months later, they held a small wedding, not loud, not extravagant. Only the rose-filled garden of the mansion, a few close friends, and all the staff, the ones who had witnessed every rise and fall of their journey. The morning sun shone down, making Sofia's white veil glisten. Ethan stood waiting at the end of the aisle, his eyes alight with a radiance never seen before. Beatrice carried Emily, who squealed and waved her little hands, calling Mama, as she saw Sofia walking forward. The radiant smile of her daughter brought tears to Sofia's eyes. When her hand rested in Ethan's, everything else seemed to fade away, leaving only 2 hearts beating as one. Their vows rang out, simple, yet unshakable. Ethan promised no castles, no world without storms. He promised only this: to stand by her, to honor her, and to walk with Sofia through every sunrise and every nightfall until the very end. Sofia smiled, answering with a nod. Applause, laughter, and even joyful tears echoed through the garden. Time passed, and Emily grew up in the embrace of both her father and her mother. No longer was there a cold emptiness. The Carter mansion was now filled with laughter. Emily toddled through the halls, then ran into Sofia's arms, calling Mama clearly, proudly. Every time Ethan witnessed it, he felt his heart completely healed. One afternoon, Sofia held Ethan's hand and whispered, "Ethan, I have good news. We are going to have another little angel." He froze for a few seconds, then pulled her into his arms, his smile mingling with tears of happiness. Emily ran up, her tiny arms wrapping around them both, as if embracing her whole family. That picture of happiness closed a story once full of storms. Amid loss and trials, they had found each other. And now, beneath the glowing sunset that spread across the rose garden, a true family stood complete, fulfilled, whole, and forever no longer missing a mother's embrace.